240 826.
Good afternoon. There's a tense standoff this lunchtime between police and loyalists in Belfast after a Protestant march to a Catholic area was banned. The marchers have refused to move and say they'll stay put until the ban is lifted. From the route, John Irvine reports.
The RUC came prepared. Dozens of officers were ready to deal with what's become an annual problem created by the legacy of tradition. For more than 90 years, the apprentice boys have marched into the centre of Belfast along this road, but this time the decision had been taken not to let them pass. Many Catholics live on the road. They objected to the march, and in the interest of keeping the peace, the RUC stopped the parade, which inevitably turned into a protest.
We have been using this route ever since our club was formed in 1904, it being the most direct route into the city centre.
A bridge over the River Lagan was the stop-off point. Effectively, the river became a sectarian divide, keeping Protestants and Catholics apart. To begin with, the standoff was good-natured, but when the fire brigade came to get through, some of the protesters tried to stop them, and the police intervened. The RUC tried to calm things, but in their frustration, a few of the men turned on the camera crews. Other bands have been arriving at the scene, and while they remain here, there is the potential for more trouble. John Irvine, ITN, Belfast.
French riot police have restored order to a jail in Dijon after 300 prisoners went on the rampage. 5 people were injured in the riot. It started when prisoners refused to go back to their cells after an exercise break. Howard Jones at ITN reports.
Burning into the night, the prison in Dijon was little more than a charred shell after 6 hours of rioting. The mutiny began when prisoners refused to return to their cells after exercise. They grabbed keys, set fire to mattresses, and gutted the prison buildings. The operation to regain control was swift and robust. Riot police were sent in, and it wasn't long before medical equipment followed. At least 5 people, mostly prisoners, were reported to have been injured. French television viewers watched it all live from the scene. In the darkness, cameras caught the prisoners being hustled out one by one. Inside the jail, police are thought to have used tear gas to quell the riot. Outside, officers faced a hail of stones from passers-by and relatives who gathered to watch the operation. The prisoners have now been transferred to other jails, leaving behind no clear reason for the revolt. Prison guards say overcrowding's to blame. The jail was designed to take 169 prisoners, not the 300 who rioted. Whatever the cause, rebuilding will take many months and millions of francs. Howard Jones, ITN.
There's been a dramatic rescue off the Australian coast. A small plane carrying Japanese tourists crashed into the sea off Coromandel Beach near Brisbane after losing power. It sank in 6 feet of water. 10 on board were injured. Rescuers pulled an unconscious woman from the wreckage and resuscitated her. She was then taken to hospital, where her condition is described as critical. The pilot had been trying to make an emergency landing on the beach. At least 8 people have been killed and 9 injured in an avalanche in Ecuador. Rescuers are still searching for 3 others under the snow, but have little hope of finding them alive. All 20 were climbers, resting in a cabin near the tip of the Cotopaxi volcano when the avalanche struck. The nationalities of the dead aren't yet known. And the South Korean President Kim Jong-sam has warned North Korea he won't tolerate further troop movements into the demilitarized zone between the 2 countries. He's put his army on full alert and says he has the full support of the United States. North Korea has reacted by accusing the South of reckless provocation. Here, the leadership of Britain's largest teaching union, the NUT, faces a head-on battle with the union's left wing today. Delegates at the union's conference in Cardiff will vote this afternoon on calls for industrial action over school league tables and inspections. And as our Home Affairs correspondent Harry Smith reports, the leadership has already had an embarrassing setback this morning.
The battle today was about who runs the union. Traditionally, it's the conference delegates who have the final say, but increasingly the executive has been embarrassed by a succession of votes for strike action, which it sees as damaging to the union's image. To avoid that, the executive wants power to appeal directly through a ballot to members, who usually take a more moderate stance. Some speakers see that as a threat to the power of the conference.
There's a fundamental principle about what sort of union we want which underlies this motion. Do we want 199,662 different unions linked only by circulars from the General Secretary, or do we want a union which is capable of collective decision-making at a local, a regional and a national level?
To others, it's an extension of democracy.
You have the opportunity today to give a message to our members up and down the country, to say to them, we have listened to you, we will implement the changes that you want, we are starting the process of reclaiming this union for the overwhelming majority of its members. We are going to stop it from being hijacked by a tiny, unrepresented minority. Oppose the reference back.
But the vote went against the union's leadership.
It's a setback for the union, not only the executive, because, of course, our members had already expressed quite significantly their desire to have these changes, and conference has denied them that, at least on this occasion.
But the executive could still win the day with further votes this afternoon. Harry Smith, ITN, Cardiff.
The M1 near Sheffield had to be closed this morning when a cloud of toxic gas escaped from a nearby chemical plant. The motorway was shut for more than 2 hours while the hydrochloric acid gas dispersed. People living nearby were advised to stay indoors. Finally, Americans are familiar with the role of the First Lady in election campaigns, but now Russians are having to get used to the idea too. Boris Yeltsin's wife has given a TV interview in which she describes how the president likes housework. Ian Glover-James in Moscow watched the interview.
Once, Kremlin wives looked like this, only glimpsed at funerals, never speaking in public, never quoted. Then Raisa Gorbachev, striking evidence that Soviet ways were changing. Stylish, intelligent, but still virtually silent. At first, Boris Yeltsin's wife, Naina, seemed the same, content to be glimpsed in homely roles, with Russia's first democratic leader.
Naina Yeltsina.
But that's changed. Naina's burst onto Russian television screens in a Western-style interview, which gives Russians who will vote in just 2 months' time a sympathetic portrait of a home-loving president who dotes on his baby grandson and his dutiful wife. The Russian channel NTV asked Naina Yeltsin what Boris was like to live with.
He has an easygoing character. It's impossible to quarrel with him. I cannot even imagine having a quarrel with him. I might get angry with him for an hour sometimes, but not more.
Naina Yeltsin says Boris washes the breakfast dishes, lays the dinner table, and even serves his favourite Siberian meat dumplings. In fact, he sounds a stickler for household chores.
When he comes home, he always notices if something is out of place. We try to tidy up before he comes, but he notices everything. He'll say, disorder again. Well, that's just his way.
And it's the way Russian politics are going. Yeltsin's being packaged like an American presidential candidate, and the homely image of Naina Yeltsin could prove a powerful asset. Ian Glover-James, ITN, Moscow.
That's the news so far. I'll be back with the latest news and sport at 5:30. Bye for now.
Hello, good afternoon. For most of the Easter weekend, northern and western parts of Britain had the best of the sunshine, but today it's the turn of central and eastern areas, and about time too. Even in the west it's not too bad. There's bits of rain and drizzle around, but odd brighter spells as well. So for the rest of the afternoon, it's central and eastern parts of Britain that have the best of the sunshine, rather hazy in places still after a misty start, but a glorious day for most people. Further north and west we look, there are thicker patches of cloud, 1 or 2 bits of rain and drizzle around too, but they're moving along, and the odd brighter spell coming through. But really the western side of Britain, rather grey on the whole, with some mist and fog around the coasts. Now the temperatures, well, on the eastern side of Britain, with some sunshine at long last, it's much warmer than it has been over the last few days. 15 perhaps, and that's around 59. And even in the west with grey skies, it's not cold by any means. Temperatures there around 12, and that's just about 54. And then tonight, well, a lot of low cloud around tonight, especially in the north and west, where there'll be little bits of rain and drizzle once again, but not a cold night for anyone, as you can see. Lowest temperatures around 6. Here's a summary.
Sponsored by PowerGen, generating electricity, whatever the weather.